Construction Jen here, coming to you with an exclusive how-to video for FitPro, wanting to teach you today how to make your own plates for your barbell. So these are going to fit on your standard Olympic barbell. They're also going to fit on the homemade barbell instructions that I had sent out. If you don't have those, let us know and we can go ahead and send those to you. A few tools that you're going to need in order to make this: drill, tape measure, and something to cut your PVC pipe 5-gallon bucket with. I've been using this Dremel. You know, they're very handy, very easy to use, but you're going to want to have something that can cut through PVC pipe 5-gallon bucket. Might be a hacksaw, I don't know. If you have a Dremel, I would use that because it's pretty easy. So you're going to want to go buy some concrete. You need just a section of this 2-inch PVC. If you already built your own barbell, you're going to have some of this left over from that build that you can use. And then you're going to need some of this rebar wire. So this is going to go inside the concrete when you're making the plate to kind of hold it together and make your concrete plate a little stronger. Once you have all your tools, it's going to be time to start making your cuts. So for this example, again, it's going to be to make a 10-pound plate using the 5-gallon bucket. You're going to want to take the 5-gallon bucket and cut down 2 inches and make your cut. Now, the bottom of the 5-gallon bucket has a little bit of a lip on it, so I would suggest almost cutting that piece off. I tried it first, and the weight didn't come out very well because the inside wasn't smooth all the way around. So just a suggestion, my first set of 5-pound plates that I did were a little crumbly because it wasn't smooth. So cut down 2 inches to get your template. You're obviously going to want to make 2 of these if you're going to make 2 plates at the same time, unless you want to just do one. So to make those cuts, take your PVC pipe, do the same thing. You're going to want to measure down 2 inches, take your Dremel, and cut you off 2 pieces for the insides of your plates. Now then I go ahead and I take a drill and I drill a hole inside the PVC, and this is going to be to help put this rebar wire. What we're going to do is we're going to make a coil that goes around, and I just thought it would be easier. I could stick a little piece of that wire inside of here to kind of attach everything together to make them sturdy as possible. I'm not an expert in concrete, so if you guys have better ways to do it, feel free to do that. That's just the way I did it. So after you cut your pieces, then you're going to want to take a sanding block or something else, and you're going to rough up the edges of your PVC pipe because this is smooth, and in order for concrete to kind of stick to it, you want a rough edge. So take your sanding block, whatever you have, and just kind of try to scratch up the surfaces along the insides of outsides of the inside pieces of your PVC. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is you're going to want to cut a piece of this rebar wire off, and what I do is I stick, like I said, a little bit of piece into that hole and I wrap it around, and then you're going to kind of make a little bit of a spiral that this is going to sit down inside of your concrete template plate thing. That's going to help hold the concrete together. So what I do is I get sort of a little bit of a spiral bend here and then set it down inside my template just to make sure that the wire goes almost all the way to the edge. You don't want it all the way at the very edge because then it's gonna probably stick out of your finished piece. But again, this is just to kind of help hold the concrete in place. This doesn't have to be perfect. There's no right or wrong with this. It's just to give the concrete a little bit more stuff to hold onto while it's inside there. And as we pour the concrete in, we're going to lift up this wire a little bit and make sure the concrete's on the bottom, and then kind of shove the wire down inside once as you're pouring the concrete. So go ahead and do that for both of them. And I just take a garbage bag out here on our porch, lay it down to put both of these templates on. The concrete then peels right off of that bag once it's dry. So go ahead and get that started. Okay, for the next part, this is going to be measuring out the concrete. What I do is I just grab a grocery sack from our favorite restaurant, LGO. If you don't have it, then I'm sorry you don't have an LGO in your life, but we have one in ours. Come out to Phoenix, Arizona, and taste the best food ever. So anyway, take your cup, scoop out your concrete. What you're gonna wanna do is, for a 10-pound plate, I've been putting about 9.9 pounds of dry concrete. I just take it on our regular scale that you use in the bathroom to weigh yourself and measure it, but about 9.9 pounds with the center piece of the PVC and the wire comes about to be about 10 pounds, 10.1 pounds. So you might be a little bit over or under with your weight, but it's gonna be approximately about 10 pounds. Okay, so now that you've got your 9.9 pounds of dry concrete, I put it into another 5-gallon bucket to mix it. So I'm no concrete expert, like I said, so I've read that, like, you don't want your concrete too wet. Sometimes I feel like it's harder to work with and get it to spread around when it's dry. I would just mix it per like what the bag says. You don't want it really soupy, I do know that, so go ahead, put water in there, mix up your concrete, and get it ready to pour. Okay, now that you have your concrete all mixed up, you want to make sure before you start pouring it in that you measure these center pieces and try to get them as center as you can inside this weight. Now, sometimes they may shift, it may not be 100% perfect, but I try to measure and get it pretty as close to the center as I can before pouring the concrete, just so the weights look a little more symmetrical. I think it ends up being about 4.5 inches from the center to each side. So once you go ahead and have that done, then you can go ahead and start pouring this concrete in. What you're gonna wanna do is, and I'm hoping you can see okay, but you're gonna wanna take just a little bit at a time and make sure you hold down the center piece, and I start moving it around the edge. Now your wire is in there, and once you get enough on the bottom, what I like to try to do is I like to then take this, wire that we have in there and just pull it up, just so it's not sitting on the very bottom. Because you want that wire to be somewhere in the middle of your plate when you're finished. I never use gloves. I'm assuming you probably should use gloves. I'm not the smartest person all the time. So yeah, so the wire's in there. There's no concrete in the center of that, so since I've moved the outside around a little bit, I'm just gonna measure, kind of shift this back a little bit where I want it to be. And then you can continue to pour your concrete on top of that, being very careful for it not to shift and move around. So once you got all the concrete out of your bucket and into your little template here, again, I'm not an expert of concrete, but I try to sit there and make it. If you hit it like this, all the water is going to rise to the top and to the bottom, which gives it a little bit of a smoother finish on each side of your plate. So I do that because this concrete mix in particular has a bunch of rocks in it, and so I want those rocks to be in the middle of this concrete plate instead of having it super bumpy on the outside. So depending on how wet you mix your concrete, sometimes you have to do this for a little longer. Sometimes, like I think this concrete is kind of on the wet side. So these rocks are settling in and the water's coming to the top pretty quickly. The last set I made, it took a while because I don't think I added enough water in the concrete. So basically I just sit here and try to smooth it around as much as possible, just so your plate looks a little nicer once it's dried. Okay, so as you can see, I finally finished smoothing this one down. The inside of, since it's been a week or two since I've made it, the inside of this plate, the PVC pipe is a little too long, so I probably on the next one I'm going to cut it down and maybe not make it 2 inches. But at the same time, once this dries, it's pretty simple if you have a Dremel to just turn the plate on its side and trim off that excess. So I would rather have it a little bit on the long side than too short and having the bar chip away the concrete in the middle. So once you're done with both weights, then you sit and let it dry. And once they're dry, you'll be able to go ahead and peel apart this plastic outside and lift up, and you're done. So then the next thing is you're finished. So you either can keep your plates like that, or you can do what I did. You know, I painted a little bit FitPro logo and the weight on here, and then covered it with epoxy. So epoxy is, I'm not an expert at epoxy, and I had a little bit of chemical reactions last weekend when I was finishing these weights. Apparently epoxy gets really hot in plastic cups and starts melting things. So didn't know that, but figured that out last week. And you want to use gloves when working with epoxy because it gets on everything, your hands included, and just does not come off. So now the epoxy, I think, like I said, is only like $30. You can get it at Hobby Lobby. I think that's where I got mine, in a little package. And you just mix 2 things. You're gonna want to set your plate up like on a paint can or something like this, if the paint can is my hand, and pour off one side. I would just say it's just a little harder to work with, because you have to like try to make it smooth around the edges, and then once it dries, you flip the plate over and epoxy the backside. So it gave a nice shine and finish to these plates, which I really liked. You might be able to get some of that rubber coating spray stuff and spray it all over your plates, and that might work as well. So that's kind of up to you, whatever you feel like the finish is. But I think the epoxy looks really nice. It's just a little tricky to use if you don't know what you're doing. But I was able to figure it out. I'm sure you will be able to. It's just a little messy. So but that's it. Any questions, let us know. But there you go. Make your plates. Happy lifting.